The ballroom gasped in unison the moment the girlfriend's hand yanked hard on the waitress's dress, tearing the seam clean open in front of 200 guests. She laughed, tossing her hair, certain there would be no consequences for humiliating someone she considered beneath her notice. What she didn't know was that the man standing quietly by the far wall, watching everything unfold in silence, was about to change her life forever. Before we begin, if you believe true character reveals itself in how we treat people who can't fight back, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes kindness always wins, and subscribe to Daily Kindness for more heart-touching stories. And don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know where our amazing community is joining us from. Hannah Reyes had taken the catering job at Ashford Tower almost as a favor to a friend, picking up occasional evening shifts to help cover the cost of night classes she was quietly taking toward her MBA. Few of her coworkers knew that detail about her. To them, she was simply reliable, hardworking, and always willing to take the shifts nobody else wanted. What none of the guests at Ashford Tower that evening knew was that Hannah wasn't just any part-time waitress. She also worked, under a different arrangement entirely, as the personal executive assistant to Daniel Ashford, the reclusive billionaire who owned the very building they were standing in, though almost no one at the company had ever seen his face in person. Daniel valued discretion above almost everything else. He rarely appeared publicly, communicated with most of his staff through intermediaries, and trusted only a small handful of people, Hannah among them, with direct access to him. That evening, dressed simply and unrecognizable among the catering staff, Daniel had chosen to attend his own company's anniversary gala incognito, curious to observe how his executives and their guests behaved when they believed no one of consequence was watching. The event was hosted by Ashford Tower's newly appointed CEO, Preston Cole, a sharp, ambitious executive who had risen quickly through the company and who rarely missed an opportunity to remind others of his position. Preston had arrived that evening with his girlfriend, Bianca Whitmore, a woman known throughout the social circuit for her expensive taste and her open disdain for anyone she considered staff. As Hannah moved carefully through the crowd carrying a tray of champagne, Bianca stepped directly into her path, already irritated after a minor mix-up with her drink order earlier in the evening. When Hannah apologized and attempted to step around her, Bianca grabbed her sharply by the arm, accusing her loudly of clumsiness in front of nearby guests. Hannah, calm and composed as always, apologized again and tried to move on with her tray, unwilling to make a scene at her employer's event. Bianca, however, wasn't finished. Irritated by what she saw as insufficient deference, she reached out and yanked hard on the delicate strap of Hannah's uniform dress, tearing it at the shoulder seam in front of dozens of stunned onlookers. "Watch where you're going next time," Bianca snapped, loud enough for half the room to hear, before turning back to her friends with a satisfied smirk, clearly expecting no consequences whatsoever. The room fell into an uncomfortable, murmuring silence. A few guests looked away in embarrassment. Nobody stepped forward. Hannah, mortified but composed, quietly excused herself to the service hallway to assess the damage, doing her best not to let her hands shake as she pinned the torn fabric together as best she could. What Bianca hadn't noticed, what almost no one in the room had noticed, was the quiet man in the plain dark suit standing near the service entrance, who had watched the entire exchange without moving, his expression unreadable. Daniel Ashford had seen everything. He said nothing in the moment. He simply finished his glass of water, set it down calmly, and walked toward the hallway where Hannah had gone. When he found her, gently pinning her sleeve back into place, he asked quietly if she was all right, not as her employer revealing himself, but simply as a concerned stranger. Hannah, still shaken, assured him she was fine, unaware of who she was actually speaking to in that dim hallway. Daniel didn't reveal his identity that night. Instead, he quietly asked the event coordinator to have a car sent to take Hannah home early, insisting she not finish the remainder of her shift. The following Monday, Preston Cole arrived at his office to find an urgent request for a private meeting with the building's ownership, a meeting he had never once been granted access to request himself. When he walked into the boardroom, he was startled to find Daniel Ashford seated at the head of the table, and beside him, still composed and professional, Hannah Reyes. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He simply explained, calmly and directly, that he had personally witnessed the incident at the gala, the torn dress, the public humiliation, the casual cruelty towards someone who had done nothing to deserve it. He reminded Preston that Ashford Tower had built its reputation, in part, on how it treated the people who kept it running quietly behind the scenes. Preston, pale and stammering, tried to distance himself from Bianca's behavior, insisting it hadn't reflected his own values. Daniel simply replied that character is measured not by what someone says at the podium, but by how they treat people they believe can affect their future, and reminded him that Hannah, in fact, could. Bianca's name was quietly removed from every future company event. Preston, given a formal warning regarding conduct expectations for anyone representing Ashford Tower, spent the following months working carefully to rebuild the trust he had nearly lost overnight. Hannah, for her part, hadn't asked for any of it. She continued her MBA studies quietly, still catering the occasional event out of habit more than necessity, though Daniel gently encouraged her to focus fully on her growing role within the company instead. Within the year, Hannah was formally promoted to Director of Operations at Ashford Tower, a role she earned entirely on merit, though everyone who had witnessed that night at the gala understood exactly why Daniel Ashford had made certain her talent would never again go unnoticed. At the following year's anniversary gala, Hannah attended not as staff, but as a guest of honor, wearing a new dress of her own choosing, greeted warmly by colleagues who remembered exactly what kind of person she had always been, long before anyone knew who had been quietly watching. Sometimes the people who witness our lowest moments are the ones who end up changing our lives the most. And sometimes, true power isn't announced loudly in a room, it's the quiet decision to stand up for someone who never asked to be seen at all.